let's talk about this. Earlier today, the Duelist Advanced Regional Qualifier Season English FAQ was posted with an error that included the WCS end of match procedures, which has now been revised. There are no changes to the round time or end of match procedures for this weekend's OTS Championship or Regional Qualifiers. The English FAQ has been corrected. The Spanish and Portuguese FAQs were not affected. The change to the round time and end of match applies to the upcoming World Championship in Paris, and our commentators will be discussing it in more detail at the event. We are looking to apply these changes to all events in the future at a later date after the World Championship. Please note details have not been finalized. Before we talk about this, these are the changes in question. This is, I think, this is from the World Championship document. If the match does not finish within 50 minutes, the result will be a double loss. A match is considered finished when one of the duelists has won 2 duels or lost 2 duels. If time expires and the match is not finished, it'll be a double loss. If the duelists have completed 3 duels without the match finishing and there is time remaining in the round, the duelists will go into a 4th duel. This last point confused me at the start as well, but the last point just means that if like one of the games is a tie by the virtue of, I don't know, double deck out or something at the same time, like I think card destruction could technically do that, then you play a 4th duel, right? Because so basically TLDR, and this is a lot to wrap my head around, and that's why I didn't post about it yesterday, because I feel like a lot of people just had like their initial gut reaction to it and just put it on the internet without really thinking about it in like a nuanced way. And I really like to, I'm the type of person to really go like, okay, what are the pros of this? What are the cons of this? And what do I think of it overall? Because I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure if this is overall a bad thing or overall a good thing, because let's be real, the current time rules have problems, and this does solve some of those problems, but it does come with other problems along the way, and that's what I want to discuss, right? But for now, the big news is that this only happens for now at the World Championship. But they did not fully rewind it, right? Because they are saying here, we are looking to apply these changes to all events in the future at a later date. So they are going to change the time rules eventually, right? But it does say details have not been finalized. So this, to me, this implies we are going to get a change to the end of match procedure, but they are not done with it yet. Like maybe if this doesn't work out the way they think it's going to work out, they might change something about it, you know? Like they're bringing it to the World Championship, which, by the way, crazy place to beta test your new time rules at the World Championship. It's crazy. But so let's walk through this, okay? Let's walk through this one by one, and let's like the current time rules are not great, and in comparison, let's just, for the people that maybe are not super familiar with it at the moment, currently rounds have 45 minutes, and if time is called, you play until the end of the current phase, and then you compare life points, and whoever has more life points at the end of the current phase wins the current game. And then if the match is tied at 1-1, there is a draw. Which the difference to the new system is we have 50 minutes instead of 45, which I think that immediately is an improvement, because you're just going to have less games that go into time, because 5 extra minutes is a long time. 5 extra minutes is a long time, and that means you're going to be able to finish more matches without even having to worry about timeout. So that's overall, I think that one is overall a positive. But here's the difference now. With this new system, there are basically no more draws at all, right? There are no more draws at all, and this does a couple of things that are interesting. And in my opinion, my head, I'm sorry, but like my head is a little bit all over the place about this change. I don't even know if I think this is overall positive or negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list some of my thoughts, some of the things I think are good about this, some of the things I think are bad about this. My initial thought was, okay, one good thing about this is that under no circumstances is any player now ever incentivized to slow play. Because getting to time is always going to give you a loss. So everyone is going to be incentivized to play faster, which I think is good. I saw a lot of crazy takes yesterday of people like, oh, there's like so much incentive now to slow play just to not give your, like, I would rather my opponent needs to get a loss too. If I'm losing, I'm just going to be playing slow so that my opponent gets a loss as well. I think that is madness. I think that is almost never going to happen. It can happen, of course, but like if you compare this to the amount of incentive that people have at the moment, but with the old rules to slow play, there's like so much more incentive before this change than after this change. Like the people have way more reason to try and get to time when they're winning because of it than like with this change, you know? I actually, you know what's funny is maybe it's just me being innocent, maybe me being like naive and shit, but I felt like there was going to be a lot of the opposite. Like unironically, my thought was like, with this, if like, let's say you have a really nice opponent, right? And you're just playing a solid game and it's game 3 and there's 5 minutes left and your opponent is going first and they're clearly going to win the game, right? Because they are full comboing and your hand is not that great. Like, I think there's a realistic world where if I have to choose, my opponent is winning game 3 right now, right? And there's like 3 minutes left. I just scoop. Like, what's the point for me to drag this out to a double loss because my opponent is clearly winning? They deserve to win the match. Like, I'll people leave. Like, I think there's more people. Maybe I'm being naive, but I think there's more people like that. I think there's more people like that than the other way around. That's just how I feel. And I think that is also something that I've seen no one mention this even. But this is what I would do if I'm having a nice opponent, and I'm trying to be nice to people, and if I'm having a nice opponent, I would do this, and I would also expect other people to do the same to me if I was being nice to them. I think that would happen sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And of course, there's people that are going to be salty and stuff like that. But like the thing is, like slow playing can always happen, and you always have to call a judge if it happens. And I just think overall I think there's less incentive with this than there is with the other one. But let's talk about, so I think in that regard, I think this is good. It also eliminates another thing entirely, which is intentionally drawing, which is illegal, and but it still happens in the last round of big tournaments when, like, for example, at the European Championship, if you are 9-2 in the last round, you know that if you draw, both of you are guaranteed to make top cut. But if you lose, you might not make it because of tiebreakers, which is a huge like incentive for people to intentionally draw. I'm not saying everyone that drew in the last round of the European Championship or any other big tournament did it intentionally. Of course, draws can naturally happen, but it's always a problem. It's always a problem because you never know, and it's always a stressful situation in the last round of Swiss for judges, for people, and it's just weird. And it's especially weird for the people that go X3 and end up 65th place, and they probably know they could have made it if people didn't intentionally draw, and they don't know who did it, but they probably know someone does, because there's always more draws in the last round than in other rounds, miraculously, right? And that's just weird. So those are I think two of the positives about this. Like I think removing incentive to slow play and completely removing the possibility to intentionally draw illegally in the last round, I think is good. Those are the two positives, and those are, in my opinion, massive positives. One thing that I don't know how to feel about is, like, there are some matches in Yu-Gi-Oh that naturally go to time, and just because, like, there's multiple games that just go long and are grindy, and like some decks are slower than others, and you are just like incentivized to not play those with those type of time rules. I don't know exactly. You would basically have to you would have to scoop games earlier, I think, under this rule. And sometimes after, like, if you win a really long game one, it's going to be weird. But like, we do have extra 5 minutes, which I think is like good. To reiterate, I'm leaning positively on these changes. The concern I have is for behavior on the bubble, because if you're X2 and you don't like your opponent, what's stopping you, you know? Well, what's stopping you is the judge, right? I mean, but that's always the case, right? Like, the thing is, there is always going to be scenarios where people could be slow playing, and you have to find a way to stop that. But I think the only thing you have to look at is how much incentive do they have to do it, right? Because I think under the current time rules, there's way more situations every single round where someone is incentivized to play slower. You know, if someone is losing in game 3, but they are slightly up on life points with 5 minutes left or whatever, you are potentially in for a wild ride at the moment. Under this rule set, they have no real reason to slow play. I also think people are overestimating how many people are willing to slow play just to get their opponent a loss, just to be a jerk about it. Because I mean, if you slow play, you are at risk of getting penalties for it, right? Like, is someone really? It's so pathetic to me, the idea of someone just like risking slow play penalties just to freaking get their opponent a loss as well. I can only talk about this from my perspective, but like this is no incentive to. When I heard this change, I was like, okay, there is no incentive to slow play anymore. Zero. Under no circumstance I could ever imagine, you know, this being an incentive to slow play at all. So I don't know. I feel weird about that. I don't think that one is a negative. I think that one. I think extra 5 minutes and less incentive to slow play, I think, is good. And also no intentional draws anymore is also good. Now, the reason why I don't think this is perfect is because there's other scenarios where game go to time, right? I think in some, you guys are like, people are not talking enough about like the games that naturally go to time without slow play being involved, because not every game that goes to time equals slow play, right? Like, there's a lot of games that go to time naturally, and for those, I think it's a little weird. Because if you have a good back and forth match with two grindy decks going at it, and like, you just have good games all around, not just many auto wins where someone just scoops after 2 minutes, you might just be unable to top when you have too many of those good games, right? Just because those are double losses now, right? And I think I don't know how to feel about that, right? I don't know how I feel about like the fact that like when you go into time and it's 1-0, it's still a double loss. I think that part is weird. I don't know if that's smart. I think that would probably still. The problem is if you make it so that if you go to time with 1-0, the player that leads 1-0 wins, then you still leave some incentive for slow play, right? Because then if there's a really long game one, that the player that won game one technically has a reason to go to time. You know what I mean? At the same time, 50 minutes and you're still in game 2. How realistic is that, really? For context of the 50-minute thing, I played Vanquish Soul at Euros, and I played Vanquish Soul at Euros, which is a grindy deck, one of the grindier decks in the format right now. I went to time once in 14 rounds overall. You know, 12 rounds of Swiss, top 64, top 32. I went to time once, and that match, if we had 5 extra minutes, it would have finished. I think this is a small part of this news that is also underrated, is that 5 extra minutes for people that play at a solid pace will just mean that like 95% plus of your matches, you will not even notice this. Right? I think that is some, because both players are incentivized to play at a proper pace, and you have 5 extra minutes compared to before. I think a lot of people are not even gonna, like, you guys act like this is gonna happen like 3 times every tournament. Like, it can happen with certain decks, and that I think is a downside. But I think like 50-minute rounds is gonna be you're not gonna go into time very often. And I think the stuff that can happen in time now, or close to time, is a lot less toxic than the stuff that was happening beforehand. Like the amount of like, I don't know, random games you lose because Kaina gains 100, Cowboy burns 800, Borger burns 1500, my friend Pearly pays 500, Mitsurugi Prayers takes 800 damage or whatever. You know, I think that part of I think if we just compare this to how bad the previous time rules are, I think we're gonna be fine. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you yeah, I don't know. I think, honestly, I think if this was the player that leads 1-0 wins the match in time, otherwise it's a double loss, I think I would be fine with it. I think that's my biggest gripe, is if you have a really, really, really long game 1, which can happen, then this is a little awkward. Because I think at 1-0, if time is called, I think you should probably win. It does punish, like, my problem is it punishes both players if one of the players is not playing at a proper pace. I think that is a little weird. Because there sometimes are people, like, people have been saying, like, okay, this punishes people for playing rogue decks, and so on and so forth, which is in general, I think, a problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes. Like, how much time to read a card or to read every single card is appropriate, you know? Like, and the thing is, I'm not excluding myself from this issue. Like, when I'm playing against someone who's playing a deck that I genuinely don't know what it does, I'm gonna have to read a lot of the cards, and it's gonna take longer because of that, right? But at some point, like, it's just like, maybe this just shouldn't happen. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that. I don't know. But I don't know what the solution to that problem is. So, like, if you're playing a rogue deck, or if you're not familiar with all of the meta decks, and you go to a tournament, and you have to read all of your opponent's cards, you are much more likely to get both of you a double loss, right? Don't read cards and just lose. I mean, no, but at the same time, at a certain level, you should be expected to know the cards, right? Like, is the solution, like, I'm just taking 20 minutes off the clock because I didn't bother reading your deck beforehand? Like, I don't know. I think maybe at some point you just, like, have to accept that when you don't know a deck, you're at a disadvantage, and you can't just read it and learn it as you go in like a YCS or something. Not nice for new players. Yes, not nice for new players, but maybe it's just a matter of this shouldn't be something they enforce at local level. Maybe that's something. I think at a YCS you can expect someone to play at a proper pace, and if someone has to read all of your cards, maybe eventually you just say, like, this is taking too much time, and call a judge. I don't know. Here's the thing. I'm not calling this positive. I'm not calling this negative. It's something where I can see some positives. I can see some negatives. I can see some stuff that's definitely awkward and punishing people for the wrong things. My ultimate thing is that, like, the previous time rules were also very, very flawed. And I think some of those flaws are gone with those new rules. So I'm, like, willing to not go completely crazy about it. Like, I'm not like mad about this if they try this. I'm happy about the willingness to adapt from the old rules. I think just in general the being like the time rules changing is a good thing. Period. The new solution having its own set of problems is, I feel like, something that's hard to avoid, because I personally don't know what the perfect solution is. I don't know what the perfect solution would be. I think maybe this with a couple more minutes, or this with like at 1-0 the player wins, and then I'd be fine with it. But like in general, I think it's hard to ignore the positives on this one as well. Like, yeah, there are things here I don't like, but there are also things here that are really good. You know, no intentional draws, less incentive to slow play. Like, those are big deals. No randomly stolen wins by just burning in time, and both players being incentivized to just play quicker. Yeah. I'm just bad and have to think long about plays. Am I slow playing? This is a very difficult question to answer, but at a certain point, yes. At a certain point, if you take too long to find a good play, you are getting yourself an unfair advantage over other people that make plays in like faster, you know? Like you are expected to play at a proper pace. Now, proper pace is obviously highly subjective, and there's no like exact amount of seconds you have per move, because some game states are more complicated than others. But if it's taking you a significantly longer amount of time to make every single decision than other players, then yes, you are probably slow playing. And slow playing, here's the thing, slow playing is not always intentional or malicious. Some people just play slower than other people because they like to think longer. But there's a certain point where that is no longer reasonable, right? Like, if yes, it's completely fine to be slower in your thought process, like that's okay, but like you can't expect your opponent to just wait for you to always find the best move, you know? This is the, like, you know, there's got to be a balance where like in some game states, and this is I think you naturally apply this without thinking about it too much when you play a tournament, right? Like when I play against someone and I recognize this game state is really complicated for them, and they think about it a little longer than maybe previously in the match, as long as it's not like about to be time and they have 1,000 more life points than me or whatever. But like if it's like a reasonable board state where they might think longer, I'm not gonna hurry them. You know, but if it's like a super simple spot and let's say there's a minute left on the clock, they have 500 more life points than me, and they have like literally one play they can make and nothing else, like I'll tell them like, hurry up, make your play. You always have to apply logic to the situation. You know, you always have to look at what's the board state, what's the timer, are they slow playing maliciously here, or is it reasonable to think for this amount of time? It's unfortunately there's no set answer for this. So I think like the good part of this is that it incentivizes people to play as fast as they can at any given time. Because here's the other thing. Yes, you're gonna have a tough time if you play against someone who just thinks very slowly, but those players are gonna be punished for that. Like if you play very slow, whether it's malicious or not, under this new rule set, you're going to have problems, right? And you're going to have to learn how to adapt. Otherwise, you're going to go 0-5 at every regional. Well, all of your opponents are going to lose as well, but you're not going to have a good time if you play too slow under this, right? And I think that's both a positive and a negative, depending on what exactly the reason it is why you're playing slow, right? But you're going to have to learn what the meta decks do. You're going to have to learn how to play faster. Otherwise, you're going to get punished for it. Right? So that's... I don't think it's as negative. I basically, what I'm trying to say is I would be willing to try it. And I think it's hard to judge this before actually playing with it. Like, I would have to go to a tournament, play under these rule sets, see how people behave, see how it plays out, and then maybe it's fine or maybe it sucks. But I think it is hard to call this a definite downgrade from what it was before. Because the previous time rules that we've had, by the way, now for, what is it, 7 years or something? Or maybe even longer? The previous time rules are also not good. 50 minutes is a lot of time. I think that's the biggest deal about this. I think the biggest deal is 5 extra minutes means that the end of match procedure matters a lot less if you go into time less because there's 5 extra minutes. So like even if this end of match procedure is maybe slightly worse or about the same as the previous one, the fact that you get 5 extra minutes means you're going to go into time a lot less often. So I don't know. I think it's difficult to judge without seeing it in action. I mean, we're gonna see it at the World Championship. We're gonna see how bad it's gonna be. Maybe we will see a miracle where all the players are now suddenly playing at a proper pace. Because at the World Championship, you can definitely expect people to know what's going on, right? To know the opponent's cards and to yeah, all that. But yeah, it's interesting because it's not what I imagined. Like, okay, here's the thing, right? If we all agree, I think, or 99% of us agree that the previous time rules are not great. It seems like we can't seem to agree on whether this one is a good solution. I think some of you say like, okay, some of this is good, some of this is bad. Some people say like this is just bad. But like, what is a solution? What is a solution? Master Duel Timer? Master Duel Timer is not a solution. 2 turns? 2 turns is the entire game. 2 turns is not even end of match procedure. Just remove the double loss and make it a draw. Bro, that removes every positive of it. If it's a draw instead of a double loss, everything goes down the drain. People can still intentionally draw. People can still have incentive to slow play because instead of losing, they would gain a point with drawing. So it's literally no difference. Can you explain why Master Duel Timer is not a solution? Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not chess, where it's always very obvious whose turn it is and whose time it is to think. The amount of times you would have to switch back and forth with a chess clock during a chain is like crazy. You would never be able to do that, right? Like you go activate something, immediately have to switch it over to your opponent. They go no response, immediately switch it back to you. You're like, okay, chain something, immediately switch it. It's just like you would be hammering that thing the entire time. You couldn't even touch your cards with 2 hands because you'd have to use 1 hand on that thing all the time. It does not work. It does not work. Priority in Yu-Gi-Oh! About who does something is just way too, it just changes way too often. So I say, I don't think this sounds like a perfect solution, but I can see some improvements over the previous system, so I'm willing to try it. The only thing that I would really hope for, the only thing that I really wish for this is that if they do implement it and it turns out that there are still massive problems with it, that we're not stuck with it for another 7 years. Because I feel like that's my biggest problem with the previous time rules is like people knew this was a problem right when it started. Like the first event you go to after the new time rules in 2018, it was immediately stupid. Like everyone noticed it right away that there was some massive flaws with it, and somehow it still took 7 years to change anything about it. And that's what I hope about this. Like I'm willing to try it. You know, the old time rules are bad enough to the point where I'm like, you know what? Let's try something new. Whatever. Let's try something new. I can see this working. I can see this going wrong. I don't know, but I'm willing to try. Okay. And if this one turns out bad, then I just hope it gets corrected quicker than 7 years. You know what I mean? But like, because I think there is a real world where this just is better than what we have now. But if it turns out to be bad, then I hope they fix it faster. That's basically where I stand on it. I'm willing to try it. And I find it hard to judge without having played under it. The only thing I can do for now is I can imagine how this would have been for my recent tournaments, and I think it would not have mattered to my recent tournament experiences. So I just don't think it's I think it's worth a shot. There's another question I have. Where does it say somewhere what happens in Top Cut? Because in Top Cut they can't both be eliminated. Like there's no shot that's going to be the case. You just imagine you have like a bye in finals because your top 4 opponents both got double lost. That can't be the case, right? They have to have something else for Top Cut. Finals, double loss. It's in the world's policies? What? Can you link me that? There's no way that's... There's no way you can't have that in Top Cut. It just doesn't work. It feels like life points don't matter at all anymore. I mean, yeah, because they don't. The fact that in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, life points are the deciding factor between like winning and losing in time is crazy. Life points are one of the least important factors in modern Yu-Gi-Oh. It would literally make more sense if they counted how many cards you have. Because that like card advantage or some shit like that would make more sense. It's like I have 8 cards, you have 6 cards. I'm winning. You know, even though that's also not perfect because maybe my 6 cards are like all like a crazy full board, and my opponent has like just 8 cards, but they don't matter. But I think that would have even that would have been a better indicator than life points. In top 8, no time limits for worlds. Where's the policy here? Does this have the policy? Oh, here. The top 8 single elimination rounds do not have a time limit, but duelists are still expected to play at proper pace. Ooh. If this carries over, okay, I mean, this has got to be an improvement though, right? Like the fact that Top Cut just does not have time anymore is very good, right? We can't do this for top 64, can we? That's my question, right? Like, if you apply this now to a YCS, does this mean Top Cut has no more time? I think it could. I genuinely think they could do that. And if that's the case, I think this is without a doubt better. because then you just don't have any more timeout wins in Top Cut. I'm pretty sure this part will only apply for Worlds. None of you know that. No one knows this. There's no point in guessing. Why don't we just calm down and wait until they announce it for like the next YCSs and stuff? I don't get it. I think this is interesting. I think it's interesting. And I think if it means no more time in Top Cut, I think that would be a massive positive. I think no intentional draws is a massive positive. I think less incentive to slow play is a massive positive. I think losing a match when you are 1-0 in time is pretty cringe. So I don't know how I feel about that part. I think not being able to win matches with decks that are a little slower or grindier, or people don't know what they're doing because they're like rogue decks, and then everyone's going to read your cards and you take a long time. I think those are all negatives of this thingy. But I honestly don't know if those negatives outweigh the negatives of the previous time rules. I think that's the thing. Like, we are preparing this one. We are comparing this one to the previous time rules, which were also pretty bad. So I don't know. I think a lot of the arguments that I've seen online, they just lacked a lot of nuance, because they were just looking at one particular aspect and they were like, okay, this one thing that came to my mind first about this is the only thing that I will talk about and the only thing that I will evaluate this by. And I think it's just lacking, you know, and it's hard to do that. It's hard to exactly know how this is going to play out. So I'm willing to try it and see how it works. For now, I'm just happy that they're changing something about them, because it's been 7 years. God, I've played so many 30-minute game ones. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you have to scoop game 2 earlier then, yeah. That's true. That's another thing, right? You just go like, all right, 30-minute game 1. Game 2, you look at your hand, you're like, okay, it's not great. My opponent's start is good. Let's just go game 3. Let's go game 3. We have like 18 minutes left. That's fine. But like, what's the alternative, right? Like a 30-minute game 1 under the previous time rules is like, okay, I will just scoop game 2 with 3 minutes left and win the game in time, right? Is that better? Is the previous solution that what people did better is like play game 2 and then on a 45-minute timer, game 1 takes 30 minutes. There's 15 minutes left. They side deck. There's 13 minutes left. They look at their opponent's combo. They try to play into their board a little bit. They scoop when there's 5 minutes left. And then they side deck. There's 3 minutes left. They shuffle. They draw their opening hand. They play turn 1. They gain some life points. They do some burn damage. And they win the match. Is that better than what this is? Is that better than just scooping game 2? Because if you just scoop game 2 under this rule set, both players are incentivized to play game 3 as fast as possible. You know, like in this example, like your opponent is no one is incentivized to try and play it slow. You're like, okay, let's get this game 1 was long. You're both on the same page. Let's try to get this game 2 and game 3 over with as quick as possible. Right? Because you're both trying to win. You're both trying to avoid the double loss. So you're both like, you and your opponent are trying to do the same thing. And I think that in general leads to more like healthy games and healthy interaction, is when you and your opponent, you both want the same thing, right? You both want the games to go fast. There is not one player that wants to hurry and one player that wants to go slow, because that leads to conflict. You know what I mean? That leads to conflict. No matter if you know your opponent or you don't know your opponent or whatever, you both want the same thing. You both want the game to finish. You know what I mean? And I think that makes a massive difference. for like the enjoyability and the amount of arguments and so on and so forth. This is going to cause a massive amount of judge calls because if the opponent plays a little slow during game one, it's going to cause issues on that aspect. Yes, people are going to start calling out their opponents to play faster even during the first game. But here's the thing. You could argue that this should already be happening right now. Even with the current rules, a big problem is that people call a judge on someone who's slow playing too late. And that's like, they're like, oh, like there's like 2 minutes left. They call a judge and they're like, my opponent has been slow playing the entire match. What's the judge supposed to do? What is the judge supposed to do? Like they can't just take your word for it that your opponent was slow playing 30 minutes ago. Like if your opponent is playing slow in the first game, then you call a judge there, and that's fine. That's how it should be. Also, I would argue there's going to be less people slow playing in game one because they also want to be able to win, right? People will the malicious part of slow playing is basically eliminated. You know what I mean? Like if someone slow plays under this rule set, it's basically entirely not on purpose because they have nothing to gain from it. So like when I tell my opponent, hey, you're playing slow right now, you should be playing faster, otherwise we're both going to lose. They're just going to, I feel like they're going to see that point, right? They're not going to like argue with you. And if they do, then you call a judge. And if they're really playing slower, then they're going to have to play faster. So I don't know. I think maybe in the beginning, people will need some time to get used to it. But in the long term, everyone is going to try to play faster with this, right? Which is good. I don't know. But yeah, once again, I have mixed feelings about this, and I wonder how it's going to play out, but I am not completely opposed to it. It still kills control decks to some degree. Yeah, dude, I can never play Paleo again under this rule. Never. Impossible. If I play Paleo with this rule set, I go 0-12. Which is sad. But I also recognize that is a big, like, that's an edge case, right? Like it's not the standard. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it's I'm not sure if it's worse than the previous one. I don't know. I'll make a poll. Hold up. All right, see how you feel. I'm definitely in the middle. I'm in the middle. I'm leaning more towards positive just because the previous ones were so bad. So like I don't think it's worse than before. It's not definitely good, but it's like it's not worse than before, I don't think. there shouldn't be a middle option. People always tend to choose that, make 4 options instead. Dude, this is how I feel. So I think it's valid. if people feel like that, let them choose that. Even with the negatives we've discussed, I'm in the good camp. I think I think that's reasonable. I think the reality that's hard to accept is that we simply don't know yet. We simply do not know how this is going to play out. We do not know how people are going to react to this on like the social aspect. You know, is it just like a massive amount of people that are going to act like assholes, or is it actually not? Which I don't believe that's true, but I could be wrong. Which is why I'm like uncertain. I think it's interesting to see that there's less people voting definitely bad than definitely good. I think that's interesting because I felt like the outcries on Twitter, I definitely felt like a negative vibe from the community, but honestly, maybe that is just on me for opening Twitter because I feel like that's always the loudest stuff over there. It's like whenever there's any sort of drama or change or whatever, like I always feel like there's so much more negativity than what I feel personally. And then, yeah, I don't know. Twitter just seems like perfect for that. I don't know. Yeah. I still think it's not good the way it is now and has more disadvantages than advantages for the game. What, the new changes or the previous time rules, how it is now? A lot of the negativity around this changes from people who aren't consistently playing Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, I don't think that's so elitist to say, because I mean, of course you're gonna have to be playing the format or play Yu-Gi-Oh to understand the implications of this, right? But yeah. The new rules, it gatekeeps decks and creativity to some degree. Yes, there's definitely negative aspects about it. That is definitely valid. I find it interesting you say it has more disadvantages than advantages though, which I think that implies you think it is worse than the previous time rules, which I don't know about that. Because the previous time rules also like discourage people to play certain decks, right? Like there are some decks that are just unplayable under the current time rules. You think of Dinomorphia, or I don't know, Pearly had that problem. We talked about Paleo earlier. One of the reasons why I never even seriously tried to play Paleo is also the old time rules make it unplayable. You have to basically side out all the good cards in your deck if it's close to time in Paleo at the moment, like rollback and stuff. Like there are some decks that are genuinely unplayable with the old time rules as well. This is not something that is exclusive to the new time rules, you know? Like, I don't know, Millennium Engine, rollback, or this kind of stuff. Like you just like, you know, on a serious competitive level, you just can't play those decks either. Ending the turn immediately will cause a lot of trouble. I think there's no big difference between end of phase and end of turn, to be honest. I think that there's just going to be the same arguments in some situations, but like I don't think it makes a like a huge difference. Well, I don't know. I think we're moving in circles right now. I think we're not adding much to it right now. I think I've said the things that were going through my head about this. Once again, I am not sure positive or negative, but there's a few things that remain to be seen. You know, will they go through with this? Will they change some things about it? Because I'm sure they've seen some of the feedback. You know, I'm sure they're gonna think about whether they want to implement this exactly the way it is now. It's gonna be played at Worlds. They're gonna see how good it works there. Of course, you can't expect everyone to play at the same standard as players at Worlds. So like there's definitely a difference. But we're gonna see. We're gonna see if we get this, when we get this, and if we get it, how they're gonna adjust it maybe slightly.